Hello and welcome to Life Design Plus, where we are mastering the art of living your authentic life. I have a treat for you today. In a bonus episode, I am fortunate to be joined by Joy Lere, who is a clinical psychologist and expert in human behavior. She also happens to be a co-founder of Shaping Wealth, the global wealth industry's premier learning and development platform, powering human-first financial guidance and helping to bring funded contentment to more people across the globe. The short of that is, they have an awesome platform for financial advisors that allows them to bring true planning to their clients. Human first planning, life planning, whatever you want to call it. They're helping more advisors bring that to their clients, which I think is a great thing. Now, I was able to steal a little bit of Joy's time for a mini episode to discuss the impact of discovering your true self, how knowing your authentic self changes your relationship with money. In just a short amount of time, Joy and I kind of go over a good conversation. She shares great insight on how you can connect with your inner self and ultimately be in a better position to have a good relationship with money. After all, it's the alignment of spirit, mind, and body that will help you better understand how to align your money with your authentic life. Now, please do me a favor, be sure to give Joy a follow and subscribe to her Substack, Finding Joy. All of the links are going to be down below, so that's where you need to go to get those. And do me another favor, please show Joy a lot of love in the comments and sharing this episode so we can get her back for more than 20 minutes to have a deeper conversation going further into how knowing your inner self and other things that go along with the psychology of money can help you better align your spirit, mind, body, and money and pursue your authentic life. All right, let's get to this bonus episode of Life Design Plus. All right, well, Joy, thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule. I wish I could have you for longer, but I'll take whatever I can get from you as we talk about these things that kind of bring, psychology to money and emotions and all of those things. And when I think about that, you're one of the first people I think of. And what I wanted to ask you to kick things off was, I have this belief that money and our decisions around money and our emotions are influenced kind of by either knowing who we are or not knowing who we are. So when we think about having a lack of identity, lack of knowing our true authentic self, how does that impact the way we view money? How does it impact the decisions and the way we feel about finances, whether or not we know who we truly are?
These core questions, who am I? Why am I here? They live underneath so much of our behavior. And I think when there's not clarity on those deep issues, we can do a lot of things, flounder, and kind of flail through life trying to figure that out. And in doing so, I think often what happens, rather than stepping back and interrogating, who do I want to be? What do I need to do to live that life, to be that person? We borrow society's ideas and messages and signals on who we are supposed to be and what that looks like.
Yeah, and that feeds into something that I've always thought is that, sometimes financial struggle or lack of comfort with money comes from we end up using it as a way to try to buy happiness or find identity by trying to impress people who aren't really paying attention to us. And then when we don't get that confirmation back, we just feel empty still. And now we've put ourselves in a financial struggle or have a bad relationship with it. So to me, what you just described, thankfully, makes me feel good about the conclusion I came to. You're the academic. You've studied all of this. You have practice with people. Like to me, you are the expert. And this is just an idea that I've come up with through observations and working with people as a financial advisor, but I really had nothing to back it up, which is why I want to bring experts in so I can continue to grow and learn, but also I can see if I know anything. When I think about this idea of knowing who we truly are, that's such a broad statement. And I think there are people who are at different stages. Some people know that they are not living their authentic self and they don't know how to get there. But I also think there are other people on the other spectrum that haven't even realized that the life that they're living and the person that they're being really isn't them. And they haven't reflected on that. I kind of want to go to that individual first, because I think we can have a lot of impact on helping somebody just take a step back and, why do I do the things I do? Why am I in this profession? Why am I who I think I am? And is that really who I am? That leading up to be, if somebody has never really thought about, are they really, do they really know who they truly are? Where can they start to even just reflect and begin to question those things to discover if they're living authentically or if they're living somebody else's life that has been prescribed for them?
I think starting with the question, what do I really want? What what brings me joy? What lights me up and what drains me?
Hmm.
And a word we have to be really careful about is should. You know, stepping back and asking, how many things am I doing in my life because I'm telling myself a story? Well, this is what I should be doing, or
Hmm.
I'm supposed to be doing, or people expect me to do this. And if your life is driven primarily by shoulds, ought tos, and supposed tos, you need to ask, is that what I want though?
Hmm.
Because at what price is the pursuit of those things coming at?
Hmm.
What is that pursuit doing to my relationships, to my mental well-being, to my physical health? We really have to take stock.
My favorite question is why? You know, why do I want that? And I think the true answer lies multiple whys down. So you answer your question why with the surface level answer. But then if you can
Hmm.
really go deeper, ultimately you might realize, well, the reason I want that thing is because, my parents told me that, or that's what it's a deeper rooted thing. And then I think you can really begin to address it and then evaluate, is that something you really want? And I also think that as you do this self reflection, sometimes you realize that yes, the answer to the why was planted by somebody else, but you really truly do want it. And I think that's
Yes,
okay because now you're
absolutely.
realizing you're making a conscious decision to pursue whatever it is versus you're just going with the flow and you don't even realize it.
We have to make sure that we aren't chasing borrowed dreams. So we are going to be influenced by people's suggestions, what we see around us, but we need to give ourselves permission to pursue like what we actually want, and then give ourselves permission to not go after what other people think we maybe ought to. You know, sometimes when I'm working with people, I've worked with several people where they reach a point in their career and they're like, no, I'm good here. I'm healthy here. I've worked hard to get here, but I don't need to keep climbing. And people look at them like, what? Wait, what do you mean? What's wrong with you? And they're like, well, I wasn't a healthy person when I was doing more. Like, I am at capacity. And that is okay. That does not mean that someone is settling. It means that they've actually reached that pinnacle, and we should not live our lives pushing, 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 pushing for the next thing. It's okay to let yourself arrive.
And I think I'm allowed to say this because I'm the patient, but you helped me realize that almost 2 years ago. I hired you for a session to kind of talk through some things, which ultimately led me to realizing I was doing too much and I was happier if I removed some things. And it was very freeing, which is, I think, I was moving in this direction, but that session with you kind of spiraled or sped things up to get to where I am today. And I know how freeing and important it is. For the individual that is, I think sometimes fear of questioning who we think we are keeps us from
Hmm.
exploring it because there is the
Yes.
risk that as you go through the exercise, you realize who I thought I was is not who I am, and I'm somebody way over there. And,
Yes.
I got to give up all these things and these relationships and make these changes, and it's scary. How can somebody overcome that fear? What are some best practices, or how do they not let fear keep them from exploring their true self?
You know, one thing that comes to mind for me as you talk about that, Justin, is I think sometimes people are afraid to let them go because what they fear is the unknown.
Hmm.
It's, what do I do without this? This is all I've known. You know, that identity piece happens a lot with people related to their relationship with work. You know,
Hmm.
all right, we form our identity through our different roles in our
Hmm.
lives. but also by who we are. But sometimes we get so focused on the roles and the doing in those roles. And work is a huge part of our identity. And here we are talking about identity and money. Like all of those things get really, really entangled. So when someone is thinking about maybe I need to step back from what I'm doing, but what would that be like? What would that cost me? What would that mean? It's important to recognize I can't have space for something possibly better if
Hmm.
I'm leaving a placeholder in place. And I think it's important to just normalize that any kind of change is going to be anxiety provoking.
Hmm.
As humans, we're always going to revert to the status quo, not because it's best for us, not because it's healthiest, but it is because it is what we know.
Hmm.
But sometimes in order to really achieve or discover our true potential, we have to sit through that discomfort of letting go of what feels safe that we tell ourselves is secure.
We can't talk about unknown without me bringing up my favorite quote. So if anybody's been listening to me through the whole podcast existence, you know what I'm going to say next. But Kendrick Lamar has a quote that I absolutely love. I printed it off and framed it, and he says, "There's beauty in completion and always faith in the unknown." And I don't know
Mm,
why that jumped out at me so much. Other than I think I kind of love the unknown because the unknown affords me possibility. And it
yes,
doesn't mean that moving from the completion to the unknown is always easy, but I get excited about what the unknown can bring, more so than the comfort of just staying comfortable. And I think that's thankfully something that's just in who I am. But I just love that quote because there is faith in the unknown. And hopefully people can eventually get to the point where that's exciting for them rather than fearful.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more that in uncertainty, that is where possibility and potential live.
Hmm.
So just making that mindset shift to okay, this is opportunity.
Hmm.
When we don't know and what the next step is going to bring, can help kind of ground us in a sea of uncertainty, which can really feel destabilizing. But the reality is, like so much of our life is uncertain. I
Hmm.
think we operate under the illusion that we are better at predicting the future than we actually are.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if we can just embrace that and learn to trust our future selves to handle future problems, we are then going to have more bandwidth and energy to savor what's playing out right in front of us in the present.
Another thing that I think might help with that uncertainty and fear around the unknown, and it goes back to this concept of knowing who you really are. If the reason you're leaving something from behind, the chapters come to completion, and now you're moving to the unknown, is centered around you know who you are, you know why you're making it, then I think that unknown might become a little bit easier to stomach versus you're just leaping for no reason and you don't even know if the unknown is aligned with who you really are, which is why for me I have personally found the alignment through spirit, mind, and body and aligning those areas of myself. And I want to keep that alignment very broad because I think spirituality and mindfulness and how you take care of your body can be different for everybody. But I think if you're doing
Absolutely.
those things, then ultimately you end up finding out who you really are and you find that internal happiness. And now you become more grounded in yourself, which I think makes the whole process easy, which is why I love that I brought you on to talk about how knowing ourself influences finances, but we really haven't talked about much about finances, which is why most of my content and most of my podcasts so far have nothing to do with money because I think this alignment and finding who you are makes the money stuff a little bit easier. Once you get above covering your emergency fund and basic living expenses, when you start really thinking about planning for the future and planning for the life that you want, I think money becomes easier when you know who you are and what you really want because now it's easy to align the dollars.
Yes, because you're playing your game.
Hmm.
You aren't wasting your money trying to impress people that are, aren't looking half the
Hmm.
time, but don't care nearly as much as you think they do. And I mean, how much of people's lives are spent trying to impress
Mm-hmm.
strangers? What is that really gaining you?
Mm-hmm. And we are allowed to play our own game, right? Like we are as individuals allowed to play our own game versus having to play the other game, right?
I think that's the only way to actually win.
Mm-hmm.
Because do you actually win if you're playing someone else's game
Mm-hmm.
and that's not the end point? So, absolutely. If you haven't already, give yourself permission to do that. And know other people will be playing other games.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's okay.
And the last few minutes, I want to go to the other individual that I referenced earlier. So the person who realizes they're playing somebody else's game right now, or they're living by someone else's script. They know it, but they don't know how to take that action. What advice or recommendations do you have for that individual?
I think, again, going back to giving yourself that blank slate and asking, what do I want? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
What what in my life right now would I be relieved if I got to leave behind?
Mm-hmm.
If I got let off the hook of having to do something, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what what energizes you? What do you want your purpose to be? What do you want your legacy to be?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the questions that people really need to interrogate as they come to get to know thyself.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that you went back to what you said earlier, which is what I was hoping would happen, because the solution or the beginning of the solution ultimately is the same no matter where you are. Whether
Absolutely.
whether you're unknown or you know, the solution to getting to where you want to be starts at the same place. If
Yeah.
if we think about processing those thoughts of what do I want, what are some good ways to do that? Because everybody's going to have a different way. Is it journaling? Is it talking to somebody? Like, what is a good way to answer those questions and examine those questions to where you can actually make sense of them? I think thinking about the answers in your head is probably not the best way to do that, but how can we actually think through that in a way that will help us?
I think there's something really powerful about sitting and writing. That is just a great way to process and just to kind of do a brain dump. And I also think, bringing in outside voices, people that can give you honest feedback, who aren't just going to say, yeah, that sounds good, because they think that's what you want to hear, but are people who care enough to really get to know you, who you trust to tell you hard truths. If you start creating a picture and they're like, what are you thinking? I think sometimes we can better trust ourselves about change if we have someone on the outside who we trust, who can validate that direction.
Another thing outside parties help is I learned this through going through Kinder's Evoke process. But when you hear your own words back to you, it registers differently. So even if you don't necessarily need somebody to go back and forth, if you have somebody you trust that you can share your written answers to and then let them read that to you, it hits different. And I've witnessed it. I've seen it because I'll have somebody speak what they have written to me and I take my notes and then I ask them if I can read it back to them and I read it back to them and the energy in their face, the excitement in their face changes drastically. And though they have actually said that sounds so much better than I even imagined, or that's not what I want after hearing it. So hearing your own words back, in addition to the advice and the feedback and the back and forth that goes on, is really valuable also.
Absolutely. I love that strategy and exercise.
All right. Well, I think in our short time together today, we have given the audience a lot of things to ponder, but ultimately, my goal was accomplished. I want people to realize that the emotions and the handling around money, there are some fundamental things there that you have to overcome first. But then above and beyond that, the answer to a lot of our money problems starts with ourself and within and figuring out all those things. And that's why I really want to hammer that home is to, as you're going through financial planning or think about what you want in the future, spend a lot of time with your inner self. And then obviously if you have a
Yeah.
partner, bringing those two selves together so you're on the same page. but it's not always about optimizing portfolio, saving on taxes, and all of those things. Like those details become easier when you understand what it is you want out of life. So
Absolutely.
I want to thank you, Joy, for helping me tell that story some more. Hopefully, we'll have you back on the podcast again in the future. And in the meantime, where can everybody follow you? I've already told them about Shaping Wealth, but where can they follow Joy? Subscribe to your newsletter, which I subscribe to.
Fabulous.
Drop all of those things so I make sure I don't miss anything in the show notes.
Absolutely. So my Substack, Finding Joy, is joylere.substack.com. You can find me on Twitter at Joy Lere Psyd, so my name, JoyLerepsyd, and I'm on LinkedIn at Joy Lere Psyd as well.
Awesome. Well, make sure you go follow Joy. And one more time, Joy, thank you very much for your time and your expertise and your advice. And I look forward to doing it again, hopefully not too far away.
Fantastic. Thank you.